Hey friends, my name is Allison Steele, and you're listening to Unravel with Allison. Unravel with Allison is a show where I take a concept that's got me in knots and we unravel it together. Thanks for being here. Where in the world is Allison Steele? Remember when I said that the emotional waves are usually tied to a question? Who, what, where, when, why, or how? I've been stuck in the vortex of where. I've spent the last 2 weeks battling my past, present, and future, and I've initiated new developments that are both exhilarating and heartbreaking. I also identify with where because I feel worn down. I'm exhausted and I'm having trouble accessing this inner light. I'm comfortable most of the time operating as the role that I'm expected to be playing, but I'm not really playfully actually playing. I'm having a difficult time in my present, and I look back comfortable with my past, but confused how it got me to this present, and the future was too much, and it was easier for me for a long time to just focus on right here, right now, to be present and make the most of that. But somewhere along the line, I stopped planning, sort of, like I didn't anticipate certain plans falling through, but here I am, and it's time to make a change. Every saint has a past. Every sinner has a future. It's been said that this was taken from the original context and spun into the Christian narrative, simply meaning nobody is so good that hasn't failed at some point, and nobody is so bad that he can't be saved. Love thy neighbor stuff. Humanity is worthwhile. Every human is worthwhile. I believe that, and it's one of the reasons that I love the quote so much. Every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. But I'm referencing this article from 2018 here that identifies the actual context that this line was intended for. Basically saying that everything that has traditionally been taken seriously, all the values of polite society and Christian morality, are mere jokes. Those who consider themselves saint are dull, static creatures. Their stories are over. And the sinners, on the other hand, are exciting and dynamic and able to develop in any direction. Every saint has a past, every sinner has a future is not only an acknowledgement of God's grace, but also a celebration of wickedness. And I love that too. Because honestly, there's always still more to the story. There's little to no excitement in stoicism. Wickedness in the eyes of others, it might be okay with, like I was talking to my friend the other day and he was like, if one more person tells me that I have a demon, and I'm like, I swear, I don't see demons. I don't understand this stuff. When people talk about seeing a demon attached to another person, I see it as like, it's something that person internally deems as a part that they wouldn't want for themselves. There's an essence that person exists with that they don't want a part of. And they've either experienced it or decided it enough for their body to reject it and identify it as other and deem on all you want. But we don't get to decide what's good and bad for other people. So what may look like a demon on your shoulder to somebody else who can't deem that piece of you worthwhile, like that may just be like your little fairy gnome on your shoulder that like whispers your favorite jokes in your ear. That kind of stuff. You know what I mean? The thing that gives you your great ideas may be a part that they've already expelled, that they have not allowed within their circle because they didn't understand the value. So they deem it inappropriate and now see it within you and can't understand its value, especially when it's a big part of you. I imagine it seems like a giant entity. Wickedness in the eyes of others is okay if it's graceful within your soul, I think. Like when something feels good, but like it might be okay even if it's societally wrong. The issues only come into play when your behavior affects and harms yourself or others. You're throwing off the natural order of things because we don't harm people on purpose. So when you discover that your behavior harms others, you have an opportunity for responsibility, and it's not necessarily your responsibility to resolve it, but you know how it goes. Tend the garden if you like what it has to offer. But I grew up thinking that if we cared about each other, we would change for each other. We would adapt together. And I still believe that, but I address it in a very different way than I grew up with. And basically the I statements and requests were unfair. I feel bad when you do this. I need you to do this in the future. I thought that those were boundaries. I thought it was a fair ask when it comes to partnership, but I'd never really stopped to think before I voiced my feelings and my needs. And had I paused for interpretation personally, I'd probably recognize that my problems are mostly because of my interpretation. Like, I felt like someone hurt me and they were responsible for resolving it. Like, the ball's in your court now. I gave so much of myself away to allow someone to hurt me by tiny little things. But when I realized that all these problems were me problems, my problems, not theirs, I know it sounds obvious, but it reframed how I approached relationships across the board. I was more silent, especially if I felt like disturbed. I was more silent, and I internalized things for a while, which got really ugly. But then I cared enough not to live like that. And I got on medication. That helped for a little bit. And then I turned away from that. And then I flipped over into meditation, spirituality, anything to support my sanity. And through all of that, I got to develop this really cool mind, body, spirit connection. And I usually life prior to this experience have had 2 of the 3 covered. I either had mind, body down and spirit was off the rails, or mind and spirit down, body was off the rails. Body, spirit, I don't know. I imagine that's like being a kid. I don't know. Whatever it was, when I was comfortable in all 3 arenas, it's like the whole system worked flawlessly. I could walk through life with my chin held high, even if I had a tear rolling down my cheek, because I knew if it was there, it was tapping me on the shoulder, reminding me that I'm alive. This is how it feels to feel. And I miss that feeling, just flowing through my world, fascinated by everything I'm surrounded by, reviving grandiosity in the mundane, and just loving my journey, even when I haven't got a clue what my next move is. But I trusted that I was doing right by myself and that everything I wanted came my way if I was open to receiving it. And when it started happening, it moved quicker than I anticipated, but it was because I was out there, because I was participating, networking beyond business cards, but leaving imprints. Even if I'm never going to see this person again, it's like you can kind of still feel in your heart a little bit when that idea is like, someone's starting to get something. But I was reaching out, and then soon I was sought out. I was asked about. I was cared for. And it's like there were these little gardens being prepared for me that I didn't know existed, but I had to choose to be a part of it to know that they were there for me. I had to offer myself grace when I didn't perform well, when I didn't say the right thing, when I didn't handle things well, and just pat myself on the back and remind myself that I'm still learning. And as embarrassing or uncomfortable as I get, continue. Just take the next step. I've spent a lot of time this year thinking about grace and trying to restore it, live in it, around it. And there's a Reliant K song that says, "The beauty of grace is that it makes life not fair." Right? Because everything is fair. There's no need for grace. But it's not. Life isn't fair, and it's not meant to be structured and ordered like our culture prefers it. Like, I used to be a big social justice warrior until I realized, some fights are not mine. And actually fighting for rights fuels a system that we're unhappy with in the first place. Everything comes at a cost, and we're fighting over values. But when real adaptation occurs, then there's more to combat, and there's more at stake, and there's more to call out when the rules are broken, and there's more rules to follow, and nobody knows when and where it's safe to exist as themselves. And this is all under the guise of protection for others. That's like safe zones in colleges and high schools are like the least safe places to visit unless you abide by their mentality and their terminology. It's like if you say the wrong thing, you're going to get every head in the room snapping in your direction. But we're asking too many people to integrate too many things. There's too much to care about and expect everyone to be able to integrate and understand when we're so busy and so bogged down and all hurting to an extent. There's not time to learn to be civil at the level that our society requests across the board. When folks are left to understand it for themselves, it's like I said, these safe zones aren't as safe as they think they are. Drag queens aren't teaching toddlers to tuck their junk. They're just dressing up and talking about embracing your creativity. I stepped back and just allowed everything to exist. I stopped passing judgments. I understood it wasn't fair, but I learned about the give and the take of the universe. What exactly happens when you shut up, when you turn off the judgment spout and see what else forms. I was gifted with new thoughts when I stopped the judgmental ones. When I shut up, I spoke to myself in a new way. Information came through in a new way, in new surprising ways that led me to a pursuit of consciousness. And as self-conscious as I had been growing up, I understood human interactions and I was extremely mindful of my behavior, especially in relation to others. I was morphic. I could become anything to be safe anywhere. I typically, though, felt small and unimportant. And it rarely bothered me because I liked my small life and close circles. But genuine consciousness was mind-boggling, and it blew up everything that I thought I knew and everything that I thought I was. So at this point, I'm going to introduce integrity, broken down to simplify it as the relay race that we exist in, running in circles until you're initiated. Integrity in tag ready. Playing a game, put me in coach. Integrity was being able to follow through, to flow through life, being able to play the game, enjoying being part of the game. And as touch and go as it was at times, we could still be playful. And we all had an opportunity to run around in the mix if we choose. But mostly it's playing a societal role, fulfilling duties as I was expected to, showing up when I'm called upon, feeling as though I'm of service, but like deep down, I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. But yeah, I was in. I was willing to sign up. I was raising my hand. I was trying to make the most of it. But you're playing a game with no winners. And I finally got tagged. And when you get tagged with consciousness, it's like how boot camp just like tears down everything you know, cuts you off from society, teaches you this new way and builds you back up with a new structure. And then like, forget the old. You have a new language. You have a new mission. You have new routines. It's the same you, but your system is getting a drastic overhaul. It started a few years ago in an Al-Anon meeting, before an Al-Anon meeting, because I went early because I was having a hard time. Life was hard. I was a mess, sobbing, and just feeling like everything in the world was crumbling. And I was immediately approached by other people who showed up early, and they were helpful, asked what was going on. And I explained myself, and they all nodded, and they're like, yeah, you should explore detachment. And my stubborn butt was like, you don't understand. I can't exactly detach because like their behavior directly affects me. And they all kind of give each other this look like, yeah, we get it. And it's a scary question for a codependent person to ask. How can I detach when their behavior directly affects me? And it's an even wilder one to answer because I realize I can't do anything, really. I can't force the change that I need to see. All I can do is share my sentiment and do my best, however that looks on a daily basis. And some days it doesn't look great, and other days it's flawless. And I can't control how anyone else behaves. I can't force anybody to do anything. No matter how much good I see in the potential, I can't make it happen for anybody but myself. And when I first got into that mindset, it was ugly. I thought about all of the what ifs. What if I had to do all this by myself? How would I handle it? And I stopped waiting for help and started doing everything I could when I could. I got burnt out, but also it worked wonders for my competency. And I took pride in my work. I was proud, I was like, holy smokes, I didn't even have a to-do list, but look at my done list. I handled my business quietly, not sneakily, but I made sure to show up for myself repeatedly in ways that I could practice. And I liked how it felt. Two things that I kept telling myself during that window of time was let them and show me. So every time what if came up, I had to blow that off because those storms of what if were big and mean. And I expected the worst out of everybody because I had to spend some time in that mindset. If I'm going to prepare for everything and have to explore what it looks like to do it alone, that means that if I do opt into help from somebody, I have to also expect them to fail and come up with a plan B. So I was actively planning for people in my life to fail me, just in case, right? I didn't appreciate when things went well because I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Yeah, that was good for now, but talk to me in 2 weeks. Just full of resentment because I felt the vortex of the cycle. And yeah, our words sounded nice, but the action never came to fruition. And I was just mad often. And instead, I just got rid of the what ifs and I got curious, thinking, show me and let them. What if this happens? I don't know. Let them. Let it happen the way it's going to happen. Instead of figuring out how to navigate another person interfering with my plans, however simple or extravagant, I let it go. I stopped planning beyond my control. I became more comfortable with myself in a present, average, day-to-day moment. Instead of worrying about how another person affects me, my health, my sanity, my happiness, I just let them show me what they're up for. I let them show me what they're willing to do. I stop relying on the nice words to manifest in reality. I appreciate the moments we have to share the nice words, and I just validate what I'm shown because that's all I have control over anyway, me, and how I choose to perceive things. And when I stopped worrying about how everything else would affect me, I started entertaining myself, spending time in my head with my thoughts. In a playful way instead of a combative one. I was allowing everybody else around me to exist to the extent that they felt that they could. I had the first real opportunity to explore consciousness and mindfulness that was separate from the social self-consciousness and the chaotic consideration of my mind being full kind of mindfulness. And while I appreciate everything that came from those beautiful considerations, by stopping and thinking, let them, stopping and thinking, show me, I was so busy observing and allowing that I stopped playing my role. I stopped participating because it didn't seem to have an effect on the plot or any personal character development. And for the legitimate people in my household, not playing a role, but allowing everyone to be as human as they'd like, I realized that I couldn't live with it because there is no us without me. So of course I felt alone. I wasn't participating with confidence. I was a spectator in my own reality. So when I come back to myself and I'm here now, the we couldn't figure out how to integrate me. And we tried. And despite the drive and the desire to support the us and the we, it takes two me's to support a we. The foundation, our individuality, our sense of self, had slowly faded, and I could see so clearly there is no us without two thriving individuals. And instead of promoting that notion and learning to swim, it's like we clung to it like a single life raft. I'm either drowning myself trying to save the other or shoving them down trying to save myself. And they were doing the opposite when I was doing the one. And I didn't understand what was happening. And we couldn't breathe. And we weren't swimming. And we were lost. And we were worn. But we're capable. And we're resilient. And we're learning this. And we're practicing it. So continuing this journey back to myself, I'm addressing this where I skipped 2 weeks of the podcast to specifically address that past, present, and future. Spend time with it, make plans with it, and it's been addressed, leading to a literal change of address. And I'm moving back to my hometown with my kids across the state, and I'm getting my house ready to sell, and that is the immediate plan. And I'm not ready to say much else about the plans, but the emotions regarding these changes come in waves. And during a low point, I came across this post on Facebook that I'm going to read with you now because it corrected my vision and helped instantly with my perspective. And it's just a reminder about this process, who we are, what we are, and how it feels to experience it all. I wouldn't recommend the pursuit of consciousness to anyone. I wouldn't have chosen it for myself. I didn't. It chose me. If it hasn't called your number yet, don't worry. It will eventually. It will draft you from your small life and make impossible demands. You will say no. You will say it can't be done. You will say, I don't want to, and you will laugh at your naivety. It will speak to you in symbols, a language you don't know. It will shake the stable earth. It will break your mirrors and douse your life with gasoline. It will light your spirit on fire. You will die and give birth to yourself in the same instant, again and again. You will remember that Shakespeare was right. All the world is a stage. You will wonder why you've been playing so small a part. For an instant, you will be ecstatic. You will attempt to embrace your epic proportions, and then the phone will ring and you will collapse back into your tiny character hopelessly. You will question your sanity constantly. You will conclude that you are crazy, then correct, then crazy, then brilliant, then crazy. You will remember that you are God experiencing. Then you will remember that you are Sally or Jane or Allison, weeping, screaming, slaving. You will ask yourself again if you are delusional. You will wonder why God has bad credit, narcissistic relationships, or a desk job that she hates. You'll wonder what kind of cruel joke this world is and yearn for a home that you can only remember by feel. Fuzzy, glowing golden, drenched in light. You'll find gratitude for your suffering. You will also realize that suffering has no value. Out of your wailing, flailing despair, you will realize that your love has been inverted. You will see that you contain all opposites and spend many years trying to figure out which one is true and snuff out the one that you believe to be a lie. You will try to murder yourself and fail. You will change your mind and reverse your strategy. And again, this tactic is a pendulum shaped like an axe that swings wild and wide. This is how you will die the death of 1,000 cuts. When you grow bored of bleeding out, you will decide you are great enough to contain all opposites. You will attempt to love them equally, but you won't. You will conclude that good and evil is an opinion. You will begin to question how your opinions have developed. You will keep some and discard others. You will reason that if the same intelligence that holds the cosmos together, that keeps the sun at a perfect distance, that spins the earth, is present in all things, then maybe, just maybe, even this is somehow perfect. It's horror and it's ecstasy. The art of becoming conscious is like any other art. You must find your medium, your talent, your unique approach to expressing the themes that move and torment you the most. Finally, you must grow the presence and courage to claim your impossible dream. Doing this will take mastery over the forces of density and duality, mastery over your many faces, the thoughts that burn you at the stake, your own terror. No, I wouldn't recommend the pursuit of consciousness to anybody, but should you find yourself pursued, there are a few things you should remember. You can't outrun it because even though it may announce your number through seemingly external circumstances, the motor of consciousness is inside you, and it will pull every curtain in your life down if you refuse to submit. There is no map. Do not buy yours secondhand. The gurus can't save you. The career can't save you. The relationship can't save you. You will only find your way one step at a time. Listen to others if you want and learn, but don't make the mistake of thinking they know the way home. If they did, they would be there by now. And while we're at it, there is no there. You don't know who you are. Where you've come from is unknown. Where you're going is mysterious. What your soul commands of you can only be found within you. No one else knows what you're here to do. And for now, here is all there is. What a doozy, right? So it's very easy to get swept up in the mix. And I'm not even going to acknowledge our world stage and the leadership, all of that kind of stuff, because we have to start it here. And I'm adamant about that. We have to start it right here and right now. So I'm giving myself an opportunity to do that. I'm seeing what that looks like to be myself again. I'm allowing myself to be honorably selfish by necessity and revamp these parts of myself that I love that I have not been maintaining. Start it here. It's a simple concept and it's not easy to maintain. It's not easy, nor is it possible to eliminate all of the sadness, the hate, and the perceived evil in the world. But if you can start to eliminate your own to suit a faith in humanity, it is less daunting, but you have to practice it and find proof in it. You have to authentically go into the world and interact as you with all of it to spread it, to be the change you want to see in the world. That's popular because it's true. When you surround yourself with it, you become it. Sometimes people don't even know they have the option to do something beyond what they're doing until they see an example. When they have found continual proof in their understanding of how the world works, it's really hard to see it through any other lens. It's hard to trust it from anyone else's mouth. It's hard. It's not understood until it's your idea. It's not the truth until you decide to prove it to yourself. And if you're not getting results, why? Are you really doing this to the best of your ability? Or are you playing it small, afraid to step into the role, afraid to step into the mindset of the person you want to become? Practice being that person. For years, I just practiced perfection because that was my safety zone. If I was perfect, especially if I was being paid to do something, you bet I had the integrity to back it up. But now it feels like I'm setting up all these pins and I don't even roll the ball. Why am I holding myself back? Why am I making excuses for myself? And what is really going on here? Answering those questions made me uncomfortable. We're supposed to like that though, remember? It's all good for growth. So I'm knocking on all of my boundaries, waiting for a callback like, hello, is it safe over there? Waiting for security because I'm not walking through without security. And on the phone with my buddy, I'm like, it feels like I'm about to start a new game. And it's like, I'm looking on the shelf and can play any game that I want to. But when I identify the who, what, where, why, how of it all, I want to flip the table before I even choose a box. I don't want to take any next step that's available. I don't want to keep doing what I'm doing. Integrity has always been extremely important to me. It's been a value of mine for as long as I can remember. And by definition, integrity is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. Basically, it was my value to value values, you know? So I had an understanding that life is not fair. I could see that in every window I peeked into, in every shoe of another's that I walked in, when I really sat back to choose to understand where someone was coming from. I could just see how they were fighting for themselves. I didn't spend much time watching people who were loving themselves. And it's not that I didn't have good examples, but it was just never an area of interest. Because what's so interesting about being okay, you know? But in games, that's kind of where it started. We've always been a game family. And when we were young, my dad taught us how to play Texas Hold'em. You know, we're slinging pennies, being dramatic, being silly, but like really get the gist of the game down, you know? My dad would say stuff like, that'll get you shot at the real tables. If like we're taking too long to make a decision, if we're like excessively taunting, or God forbid cheating, that stuff didn't fly at Dad's table and it wouldn't fly at the real tables. That's all included in the package called integrity of the game. And literally too, if there's a misdeal, you reshuffle. You don't put the card in the middle of the deck if it accidentally flips over. You trash the hand and you start fresh. You follow the rules so the game is fair and fun for now. You follow the rules later when you're older so you don't get shot. It's playful, but it was important for him to teach us and have us practice the right way. And I sat down with my dad for a little bit this week and unloaded everything that I'm unloading here with you, but a little bit different, you know. We were having a completely different conversation about filming and set design, and he was telling me about when he would build sets in high school, and there was a sign on the wall that said, if you don't make the time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you'll have time to correct it later? And that's the next layer of integrity. Kind of, it's like, don't fuck up on the front end, but beyond having the stability and capacity to produce and participate, like in our little rounds of in tag ready, there's this part that's into gritty. Getting into the gritty details, knowing that if anything is worth doing, it's worth doing well. And there's a big part of me that stands by that. Yet I have a tendency, when dealing with just myself, when dealing with just who I am and what I'm willing to do for myself, I let things pile up. I procrastinate. I only really set myself to a standard if there were inevitable judgmental eyes. If somebody was going to see my name attached to something, I would do that thing properly. But the bar was very, very low for myself. I didn't focus on the important maintenance and internal reflection stuff with myself at all. I used a bath bomb every once in a while and I called that self-care. Or I checked to see what was going on the moon so I could see if I could write my attitude off. That's not integrity. But integrity so specifically matters through a specific lens, and I've never met a single person whose lens is in this same alignment as mine. This meant that I would go beyond my comfort zone a lot. And sometimes my comfort zone would be expanded because of it, and other times I shut those doors happily and never wanted to open them again. But I had a unique lens, and it used to break my heart. But as I've watched over the years, I think I've learned that nobody shares a lens. They are intentionally unique, and that's the beauty of grace, is that we will never fully understand, but we can love anyway. We can support each other anyway. We can always fall back on the fact that we are human and we can do better. Also, by definition, integrity, and most importantly to me, is the state of being whole and undivided. That singular lens used to be a loneliness factor. I used to think that I would never be truly understood. But I also assumed that I had to be understood to be fully whole and undivided. And it's an unrealistic expectation. I wondered if anybody else felt this way. I wondered if anybody else cared as much as I did. If anybody else felt as lonely about it as I did. And when I identified that as my story, being misunderstood, I found mountains of proof. It's very, very easy to see that as a reality. And it was even more confusing when I couldn't comprehend why. I thought I had to understand everyone in order to offer them grace. That's how the cycle worked for a while, until I realized that I could just practice grace on the front end instead of being triggered and having to integrate grace to just start with it. Because when I did get triggered by it and I did spend time with it and I did ask myself these crazy questions about how people could be so this and do that, all of the answers were worthy of grace. So practice it on the front end. There's little to no agitation in daily interactions. If I enter interactions with curiosity and fascination, you can't hurt me. If I'm not understood, it's not a problem. If I don't understand, it's not a problem. But if I do understand, you get to help me learn something new today. But if I only access it when I'm triggered, then I don't really get triggered anymore if I'm already swimming in it on the front end. It's a pool that I have constant access to. Only matters if I choose to visit it or swim in it or stay in it. Still, I find that a continual practice of grace, doing this on a daily basis, does not coincide with my energetic drive to exist larger and louder than I've been allowing it. I have more to do and I have more to be, and I can't figure out how to do that right here and right now. So that brings me to our next level of integrity. And we're back to the alphabet too. We're going to integrate the TY. This is the integrity I'm opening up to start practicing now. X marks the spot is right where you are right here and now. It's where you are on your map of nothingness and nowhereness that doesn't exist, but you are here. And from that X, there is a T. And there's a lowercase t, that's you walking through the world on the cross, sinning around. Then there's an uppercase T, and that's what we're going to take ourselves to here. Ride it up the elevator and be on that top viewing level of who you are and what you want to see for your life. And stand on that overlook, sit there in your mental space and take a look around, not at what you want to see and what you want to have finished, but how you will feel when you are there and it is complete. That is your T. And your Y, if you can look at the shape of a Y, like there's a part where it could look like a funnel. Imagine it going the opposite way, okay? So the Y, if you can imagine like your body being the beacon up and then reaches out and upward into the cosmos. Or more simply, it can be a slingshot. Whatever it is, fill it up with your reasoning and sling it or show it. Put it out there. Your preference, your desire, your perfection, your reasoning, feel it and integrate that vision and open up to allow it. Integrate it with every action. Sprinkle that feeling into your daily life. In a recent episode, I shared a poem that I wrote that was called I Found God at ICB, and I named it that and started like that because it was a nod to a song that really just spoke to my little heart every time I heard it. The opening line is, I found God in a catalytic converter in Topeka on a Monday night. Later in the song, when I start getting goosebumps, it's the line that says, you've been known to obsess over the future, Do you think you'll get away from the past? And then I feel it in my entire body when they get to every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. So you know what keeps me hanging around. No, you can't keep a good man down. And as much as I don't care for the religious depiction of saints and sinners, I still knew that line speaks to me. I knew the concept of how I understood it, why it was important. I knew the way I felt when I sang those words. And I got it tattooed on my arms when I was 18. Right above where the elbow bends, it reads, every saint has a past. And the other arm reads, every sinner has a future. So when I was waiting tables working in restaurants, I'd get asked which one I was, a sinner or a saint. And I would always confidently or jokingly, whatever, respond that I'm somewhere in between. My integrity and my character were outwardly and culturally conflicting. A lot of the things that I did didn't make sense for a girl who ... Whatever arena I was in didn't make sense when they started hearing about other things in my past. Because like I've said, I've lived 1,000 lives in this one lifetime. I see the world through a different lens. There's one where I was on the rise since the day I was born, and I knew that I was onto something bigger and better. And not that I was biding my time, but that I was developing the character I needed in order to evolve to this next level. This was my mindset, usually based around promotions and job opportunities, because I felt like that's all really life had to offer me in the early 20s. That's what I was supposed to do. But when I was missing holidays, missing entire days away from my kids, missing everything that I told myself that I cared about the most. The company I was working for, it just became more and more apparent that the integrity I had to deliver at work was not in alignment with the integrity in my heart. And while I've been able to cross those lines in the past, I really got to a point where I could feel the betrayal. And I knew that I was doing this to myself. And I hated myself for the things that I had to do and the way that I had to treat people to justify it, because like they signed the contract, they know the consequences. That's not justifiable. I was done delivering the message. I was done managing situations that I couldn't respectfully engage with. For a long time, I even convinced myself that things were okay as long as I could convince the staff to get on board with it. But the more I would try to justify the company stance or like these decisions that clearly did not make practical sense, and then try to hold them to a standard that doesn't allow for the service that we demand because of these other parts that we're pushing. Why? Why am I spending my life here? Why am I doing this to everybody? Why am I doing this to myself? I walked away, and it wasn't easy, but it was simple, and now it's clear, and I'm ready to integrate this. I have a code. I know it hurts when I don't live by it. Allison doesn't get to exist within a rigid code. I saw another post on Facebook recently saying that my personal curse is the knowledge that I function best with rigid structure and strict routine, but am almost totally incapable of independently establishing or maintaining that structure and routine. I first read it like, yep, same. And then I stopped to highlight the actual I statement there. I function best. First of all, in the eyes of society, culture, every sane American, if they had a chance to see into my past, into my mind, they would probably agree with that statement in totality, because I was the absolute best at my job when I was medicated. When I'd start every day with 4 pills, end the day with 2, I could barely close the lid on my pill case, but I didn't want to switch to that AMPN case because that makes it all too real. But I told myself it was okay because one of them was a big vitamin. I'm like, no, I was medicated for all the shit that was wrong with my mind and my behavior, and then I functioned. And at the height of my functioning, I crumbled because the machine went into super speed and I had more time for consideration because the Adderall sped up the clock. I thought a whole lot, really, really quickly, and my mental, personal growth and development skyrocketed. My brain was just, I loved where my head was at, but it felt like my whole world was unmanageable and crumbling. And walking out of that shift was just part of the story where I put the code first to see what that feels like. And it's that part, that integrity of code first. I know what I'm willing to live with, and to spend time with it all, to integrate those gritty aspects. It's my way, and it's okay that it's scratchy and it hurts a whole lot right now. But I know that ultimately it's going to smooth things out, and I get to see what that looks like. But it still takes all 3 parts, the in-tag ready to play the game and go out and experience life. Into gritty work, be willing to look at yourself and address those gritty parts. Even if it's messy, it's necessary. And finally, your T, your vision, and your why. Hello, why does it matter? Your perspective matters, even if you're the only one who truly knows why. And it's time to start embracing it. Thanks for listening to another episode of Unravel with Allison. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Unravel with Allison. Follow, subscribe, keep in touch, and stay up to date on new episodes. If you'd like to support the show, start with the algorithm. Rates and reviews always help to spread the message. Thank you for being here, and I'll catch you next week.